From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of amazing ideas at stunning digital marketing. In today's podcast, I have Mr. Todd Nilson with me, and we're going to talk about building communities. This is one episode you don't want to miss. Sit back, relax, grab a drink, enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Stunning Digital Marketing is your digital concierge. We help you put the pieces together to make your marketing success. Specialties we have including WordPress design and development, WordPress security, which is one of our most popular offerings, ads, and more. So if you want to succeed in the digital world, go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and have a look at what we offer, and we'd be glad to help you. And let's jump on a call and make it happening. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here, and today I'm here with my guest, Mr. Todd Nilson. Hey Todd, how you doing?
Doing great, Rob. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a long time coming, and I thought we'd do something different. We talk about communities and how to manage communities, and that's kind of what you're into. I don't know if you know, I think I've shared with you ahead of time. I co-manage one of the biggest WordPress communities on LinkedIn that we're sitting at about 14,000 members right now and counting. So just a few there. So
Just a smattering of a few people. Yeah, I remember us talking about that a little bit the last time, especially some of the controversy and things sort of swirling around that world lately.
yeah, we're not going into
We won't
that.
go there, no.
No, it's still going on. So I wanted to ask you, I like origin stories. And how did you get into community management and how did that and that whole side of your business take off?
You know, I will probably sound like just about every other person who's moved into community as a profession by saying that it was accidental. Just like Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider accidentally and ended up with these superpowers. I very accidentally fell into community management by way of my earlier career as a recruiter, where I got very interested in and enamored of social media platforms and their ability to deliver business value to people, and was an early proponent of using those tools and using software collaboratively to build connection and trust between people. And that ended up growing into a career direction for me because it was something that didn't exist really strongly before 2010, not as a corporate profession, certainly, although there was, of course, certainly many online communities before that. But I became very interested in that world of software that's dedicated very specifically to bring people together so that they could share stuff they're passionate about or get work done or raise funds or awareness about an issue or help each other for having some kind of shared illness or health challenge. Lots of reasons why people come together in these technology mediated spaces to help each other.
Yeah. And I think the hardest part with technology spaces is you're not physically always there, right? So you and I are doing this call on a virtual call. And I still think as humans, we crave for in-person connection, right? Some of that as well.
We do, and I think I got an appetite for that community building. There was an inflection event for me, let's put it this way, that kind of gave me that career direction into community building, and that was around 2008, 2009, when there was the technology downturn that happened. A lot of people found themselves out on the street, even though they'd been in their jobs for 10, 15, 20 years, and suddenly it was a whole new world of work out there. And there's this thing called LinkedIn, and we needed profiles on LinkedIn. And I don't know how to search for a job, going to monster.com or, some of these. There was a lot of confusion and fear around that. And at the time, I was a recruiter, and I had been to a little earlier on when the tech bubble burst. There were these things called pink slip parties
Yep.
that people would hold. A recruiter would go to a bar, look at your resume, give you some ideas. Maybe you go and network with other people. You were basically commiserating about what went wrong in that job situation. And I liked that idea of sort of communally helping each other in the space, but I hated the idea of the negative way that that space was convened around the pink slip and sort of let's go to a bar and drown our troubles. I felt like there was a more positive way to turn it. So around 2008, when the downturn happened again, I and a group of other recruiters got together and collaborated to put together something called a job camp. Uh,
Oh
and
yeah.
we created the Milwaukee Job Camp event and ran it for the first time, thinking, well, maybe we'll have a few people show up at this thing. We set it up as an unconference, which for anybody that doesn't know what those are, it's a vote with your feet kind of event. You come in, you come up with the agenda of topics that people want to talk about. Hey, you want to talk about writing resumes? Great, go ahead and do this session at 10 o'clock. We'll put it up on a virtual on a screen, and people can kind of show up if they feel like it. Um, we had 500 people show up at the first one. We're like, wow, this is kind of cool. It's interesting. So let's do it again. We ended up doing the event like 4 times, about 1,500 attendees each of the other times that we ran it, and helped an awful lot of people. And we set it up in such a way that it was going to be fun and it was going to be more upbeat and help people kind of get their mindset straight because of course that's the biggest challenge when somebody's in a job search. And we just had a lot of fun, building it into more of a celebratory event. Like, hey, learn how to do a LinkedIn profile. Here's a bank of computers over here and people that know how to help you. We'll do it. Here's somebody that's doing headshots. Sure, let's go ahead and get a picture of you. We'll get it up on your LinkedIn profile. Oh, you want to do a mock interview? Great. Go over to this room and talk to 5 different recruiters and get different views of how to conduct yourself in an interview situation. And so it was much more of a carnival atmosphere than what you get at a job search or like a job fair. I always call them job unfairs because they're just not great experiences. And so I was bitten by the community bug and that sort of that in-person element
Yes.
of
I'm sure.
connecting people. But also it had a strong online component too. We had a website, we had a good social media presence that was built in a very grassroots way. I still credit the virality of that event with a LinkedIn message that I sent to about 50 or so of my contacts in the recruiting world that formed a kernel of volunteers who got excited about and it turned into a community
Yep.
of collaborators, that built this experience. So sorry, long example, but that was really a formative moment for me career-wise to see the potential of what online could build together and to understand that sense, the excitement and the fulfillment of building communities with people.
No, I agree with you. I think it's an experience worth sharing. We talk communities and online, and the first thing everybody looks and says, let's go create a Facebook group. And I
Yeah.
just shake my head. And I have to tell you, I hate the Facebook experience more than most people. And you're laughing at me because you're in the same boat, I bet. And I am at the point where, I guess it was about 2010 or 2014. I really jumped on in a big way, partially because I was running ads for clients. So if I'm going to run ads, I might as well do some other stuff and I might as well. And then I started looking at all the rules around communities on Facebook and said, I don't really want a part of this mess. And one of the problem is you don't own your data, the convoluted rules. And I think people create Facebook groups, frankly, because it's easy and they're lazy. And
That's it.
you know,
It's
I don't
low bar. Yes, yes.
and I'll say that. And I think that's a big mistake. I think you should look at some other platforms. What do you think about where you should create a community and why in that whole discussion?
We didn't talk about this up front, but that is such a perfect entry to this discussion because I think Facebook has made it very easy to create private groups or even public groups within the space. But you need to think about where to build your community online in a way similar to the way a urban planner or an architect plans a building or a
Mm.
space. Is the space where you want to convene people fit to the purpose that you're trying to fulfill in the space? And so, yeah, it's really easy for me to create a Facebook group for my community to try to create that. And Facebook actually has some pretty good training and guidelines around community creation. But what they don't tell you, and what is a matter of fact, the situation is that when you are joining a Facebook group, your chances of actually seeing the notifications from that group and being able to participate and come back to it on a regular basis are very, very low. And so I always liken it to trying to convene your quilt making group in the middle of a casino with blinking lights and lounge acts, going on. Like you're trying to create a space, a safe space for those individuals to gather and talk about the stuff they care about in the middle of a carnival, in the middle of a gambling casino. And so so you need to think about the ecosystem or the environment in which you're trying to build that community. And then you need to think about the purposes that you have, for that space. Some communities need to exist because they're trying to educate people about some technical topic or something that they need. And that means you're probably going to pick a community platform that has some kind of learning management built into it, the ability to offer courses or to take courses. Some communities, like a lot of the work that I do is in B2B style organizations. A big use case for them is to enable peer support for their products or services. So like I'm trying to create this great environment where power user A can help newbie C to solve a problem, in the space. And I want to acknowledge those
Yeah.
power users and lift them up. Um, Maybe it's ideation, like I'm looking for new ideas for my software or service. And so there are community platforms that have special abilities to let me do that. So it's never a one size fits all. It's a tailoring that experience, and choosing the platform based on what your core value drivers are going to be for that space.
And what the goals are. And I think another factor too is who is running that community or the moderators for that community. Because I know, like, as you know, I co-manage a LinkedIn group, and we have some pretty strict rules in that group,
Mhm.
and we adhere to them. And I'll tell you, LinkedIn is known as can be a spammy platform depending on how you let it go.
Mhm.
And we actually moderate all the spam. So the option we went in our group, and this was a group that LinkedIn actually came to us and asked us to run for them. So they wanted us
Mhm.
to do that for them. One of the things we do was we went to a full moderated forum, and we had to.
Mhm.
So because that's how you get rid of all the look at me, here's my call to action
Yeah,
post. And it's like, and people don't understand that the moderators are as important sometimes as a platform itself.
absolutely. And in fact, I would say, when I talk to organizations about building communities, there's three levels of trust that you need
Yep.
to look at. One is the platform trustworthy? Does it feel like a spammy experience? Is it a moderately contemporary user experience, to be in this place? Does it feel like I'm, you know, and I've gone into a hotel ballroom and they've locked the doors and they're trying to sell me a timeshare. Um, is it a trustworthy place? Is it a trustworthy organization? Is the second level, and that gets into the representatives of that organization, your moderators, and the people that are running the community. And are you being transparent about the reasons why you're convening that space? What do you get out of it? What's in it for you that you were trying to enable us as a group of people who maybe have an interest in this topic or this product or service? And that's not always 100% clear. Like a lot of pharmaceutical companies had to learn the hard way that people didn't like it when they didn't disclose that they were a pharma that had a financial interest in the drug that they were taking.
Of
Um,
course.
and then the third level, and this is often overlooked too, is can I trust the other people in the community?
Yeah.
Is there an assumed benevolence in the other people who are in that space? These people who share my concerns? Do they trust what I do? As was encountered, I think, in the early days of, if you remember Second Life, where corporate organizations tried to set up like meeting spaces in Second Life, and this was before you could kind of keep spaces private, and they were invaded by people that wanted to demonstrate against them or just wanted to troll them,
Yeah.
and were throwing rudely shaped objects at people in the event. So if you can't trust other people there, it's hard to get people to a place of intimacy if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel like they're in a trusted environment.
Yeah. So I wanted also to move. We're talking a little bit about Facebook and, you know, goals. Let's talk about platforms because this is a discussion that can go off the rails real quickly. I know I'm a techie guy. I have a techie background. All the tech communities seem to like to go on Discord servers. I was saying to you before we went to record, I just throw my hands up because I hate Discord. So, rule number one is if the community's in Discord, I'm probably not going to join because I just can't be bothered. Um, what platforms do you really like and what you don't like? And I'll preface this by saying there's some new ones like Skoll that seems to be the rage right now. There's a couple others. And then if you're trying to build community, and my $1,000 question is, should you be building your own forum on your own website and saying, forget all the platforms? What do you think?
Well, so I'll address the bit about Discord first.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think that there's some kinship to that idea about like, well, should I just start up a Facebook group because it's easy for me to spin up? I think that, right or wrong, a lot of dev communities, a lot of gaming communities will default to Discord as an option
Oh, yeah.
because they feel like everybody gets that, So I'm gonna, same thing happens with Slack, um,
Mhm.
that you'll get invited into Slack communities just because, oh, everybody gets how that works. Okay, so there's less of a bar to the user experience, going to those places. I think that those, I'll call them very chat heavy. They are asynchronous, but I think there's a large synchronous component to them, meaning like conversation is happening back and forth in real time.
Yeah.
In platforms like Discord and Slack and Microsoft Teams, that creates some problems for community building. First of all, because of the nature of the chatter, as you start getting more than 100 people in those spaces, they become very loud
Yep,
spaces,
they do.
and you start to feel overwhelmed by keeping, how do I keep up with all this stuff? Um, and then, of course, there's what did I miss? There's the FOMO, fear of missing out,
Mhm.
from that space. There's a, man, I think it was back in 2015, there was a Medium article that was sort of a tongue in cheek and said, "Dear Slack, I'm breaking up with you, and here's why."
Yep.
Uh, and it was really all about that, that it was just too hard to be in that space. So I think there are problems with those kinds of presence-based community applications, and I don't even think they're necessarily great community applications. When I think about what is an effective community platform, um, it does allow me to have asynchronous conversations, which fine, those platforms can do that. But they also need to provide for durable knowledge
Yes.
in these spaces. And by that, I mean can I find stuff that I put in there before? If anyone has ever tried to find something via search in Slack or Discord,
Oh, forget it.
it's a nightmare, right? And they've tried to shore this up. Like I'm more of a Slack user. I like you. I usually run the other direction when Discord is, I'm invited. I've used Discords and I've been in them, but I'll usually stay away from them. But Slack has tried to address this by adding things like canvases and bookmarking things in channels and all that. It's still not an effective method for discovery of rediscovery of resources in the place. And I think that's a key to what makes a community platform work or not work is searchability and the durability of knowledge
Yeah,
in those spaces. So the platforms that I do like, to answer your question,
yeah, please.
I think that they tend to split in two directions, in my view. One is more um, enterprise level,
Yep,
large scale community platforms that need to have a lot of good webhooks. They need to have a good API library, built in. They integrate with other systems. So there's some old players in the space like Chorus and Higher Logic and newer player Gainsight, which used to be Insighted.
yep,
These may be gobbledygook words to some of your listeners, but these are platforms that are more prone to be bought and used by large enterprises, particularly large SaaS-based uh, companies, but in the B2C world as well. You'll
yep,
see these, more commonly showing. Vanilla Forums is another one, which is modern take on the old bulletin board,
yeah,
style forums, that were out there. Um, and then there are what I'll call sort of the new kids on the block, although they're not entirely new. Some of them have been around since 2014, 15 or so. And those are they're a little more turnkey, in terms of how they work. So more people will probably recognize Mighty Networks
yep,
or Circle. Um, they have an awful lot of name recognition, lately. But there's a lot of other good ones out there. There's Disciple Media. There's uh, Disco, Discourse, a great best of breed discussion platform
yeah,
as well. But I track about well over 80 that kind of come up on a pretty regular basis out in the world, and there are more, that are hitting all the time.
yeah,
And as far as favorites, it's hard to pick from among all my kids, right? But
yep.
I think that some of the ones I mentioned are ones that I tend to work with a little more frequently. So I don't know that they necessarily win in all the categories, but they tend to have some specialized use cases, as we discussed a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is don't build your own. Go find a SaaS product that kind of does it for you, right? Because they do it well and
Yes.
they're already in place.
Yeah. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel around and I have this conversation and I've come into companies and this happens semi-frequently where they've decided they just want to build their own version of a community. So a bespoke community platform. And I always wonder, like, why do you want to maintain the software overhead, for that? When there's best of breed stuff that's out there that is pretty affordable and easy to integrate with your website experience. I, I don't see a good reason to do it. And I'll even say like there are some add-on platforms that I think are probably not worth the effort as well to add on unless like you really want to do it. And sorry, I know you're in the WordPress world, but I've got to say like Buddy Boss and
Buddy press. Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Buddy Press is sort of the open source version of Buddy Boss. Is they
Yeah.
went to market and kind of did their own thing. And I've worked a couple of years with some firms that wanted to build Buddy Boss communities, and it's just from my view, the juice is not worth the squeeze. It just takes too long to configure. It's too fussy. And I get like when I did it, the firm that I worked with, I'm not naming names around it, they were a big WordPress shop. And so they're like, yeah, we can do this. Let's use this platform. 2 years of development later, the project gets abandoned because just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many fiddly bits to configure. And uh, you know, I tend to believe that the more you have to think about the plumbing, the less time you have to think about the actual building of the community, the social process of bringing people together.
Yep, I agree with you. Um, if you're building a new community, so let's call it Community X, and for the sake of it, for let's call it it's for drone flyers. Okay. Just
Oh yeah.
because
Okay.
I'm in the drones right now. So let's go with that.
Nice.
How do we get people into that community and then how do we make them happy? Like how would you do it?
Yeah. So my typical approach when working with an organization that wants to bring in a very specific audience like that is to ask them, how well do you know these people? Like, have you talked to them? Have you talked about the kind of problems they're trying to solve? Where do they go now? Are there competitors that we need to know about? Is there a strong Reddit that is doing everything that we want to do? And if so, what are we going to do that's a little bit different? And it's going to give them something more. There's got to be a reason to come there. And an old friend who one of his favorite sayings was, "You're showing me a bright shiny hook, but there's no worm on the end of it."
Yeah.
There's got to be a worm. There's got to be a compelling reason for me to want to invest the time to get into this platform.
Yep.
And to to kind of follow back around to the earlier part of our conversation, making it easy to come into the platform isn't reason enough. Because then if it's a low barrier to entry for me to come in, I don't have to do anything. I've already got an account, on that platform or whatever. Um, if there's still not a strong reason for me to hang around, I'm not going to come back, you know, or I'll come back maybe if I feel like it, but it's like you're throwing me a bone to do that. So so really understanding having substantial conversations with as many people, potential people from that community as possible is incredibly important. And then really planning for the operational support of that space. Like the technology is really the least of my concerns in a lot of these cases. I could put up the most primitive online discussion software and still have a really strong community if the people there have a good reason to be there. If there's a project they're working on, if they love a certain kind of drone and they're doing mod kits and like I
All
know
that
nothing
stuff.
about drones,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
But like you meet, collaboration opportunities. Oh, you know what? You've got events, you've got contests, you've got giveaways. What, you're giving away this super cool drone? Awesome. You know what? I'm in. I want to be there. You've built, gamification into the platform that's meaningful. That, oh, you know what? I got certified for, flying this kind of drone. Absolutely. That's now showing as bling on my profile. Now people are going to ask me questions about that. I've got some social standing in the space.
Mhm.
All of these things that I'm mentioning are designed to keep that space, interesting and sticky, as the marketers would like to call it. Like what's going to keep me coming back there because that's where my people are. That's where the cool stuff is happening.
And I think a lot of it is what you just said, the people. I find being in enough online communities, and you're in lots of them, probably way more than I am. I find I hang out where the people are that I like to be, and I like to be around, and I like to converse with. And some of the people are in multiple communities. And then I find the discussions drive a lot of it. So I know one of the online communities in the WordPress space, which I will not name right now, with everything going on, has gotten so negative to the point I've actually checked out. I'm like,
Right.
my headspace cannot handle this. And it's not the people, it's just gone, it's done a total 180.
Yep.
And it's like, I can't handle this. So I've checked right out to the point I won't even read that community. It's there.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been in it in like 3 weeks and counting.
Com Communities will death spiral. It can happen. Yeah. There are three paths of evolution for communities. The one that most go for is to sustain.
Mm.
Um, the other one is to evolve because the old premise for the community is no longer true or there's been a change. And the third is decline. And there are patterns of decline in communities, and unfortunately, controversy is one of the things. If the community cannot overcome its own negativity,
Mhm.
it will die. It will close, and that's natural. That happens,
Yep.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Um, and then there's people that would argue and say, let's just use a social media platform like X or whatever. And I always say, have you ever seen the noise on X? If
Yeah.
you're bored, and I'm on X, and you're on X, I'm sure. And there's a lot of noise there. And I think the one thing about going to a close community or a smaller group is the noise shrinks. The noise factor shrinks, and
Mhm.
the value add actually goes up, not down. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So social, big social, I'll make that distinction because I think communities are little social.
Yep, I agree.
Big social is a commercial marketplace. It is
Yep,
a broadcast medium. It is arguably, it is a town square
yep,
where you see all walks of life passing through, and it is very noisy.
yep.
And it's hard to build communities in those spaces because they are so very public. And
Hmm.
so, especially, depending on the kind of feeling of community or belonging that you are trying to achieve, in most cases, they're not going to be fit for that purpose of doing it because even if I have things like a chat or what I forget what X calls their little audio chats, uh,
Yeah,
community.
you can send a audio. Yeah, I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
even if I'm doing one of those, like I don't know that I can trust that there aren't going to be people who want to troll my point of view or just for the sake of it.
Mhm.
So I'm going to guard what I say
Yeah.
in that space. And so that's why we need those more private spaces, the small, cozier communities where people feel a little more freely able to express. That's why I said, like, that levels of trust, there needs to be a trust in the benevolence of other people in the space. If there's not, it's probably not a good community space. It's probably not going to work well.
Yep. Do we need video or just audio or just text?
I think
Or
we're
all of the
in.
above?
I I want all of the cues that I can get so I can get
Okay.
to know somebody. I think that the ubiquity of video conferencing goes a long way towards community building because I can get to know you across the miles and I can see facial expression, micro expressions, if you will. Tone, I can hear tone of voice. I can see sort of how you're holding yourself in the chair. I can see what's behind you that may tell me something about your personality, your likes or dislikes. Like there's a whole set of visual and auditory cues that I can get now that I couldn't get when I was limited to a text medium. Text
Yeah.
is a little limiting in that fashion. And then I think we're in the slow progression right now to evolve towards um, more proximity based communities in online spaces. So virtual worlds, things that I think anybody who's a gamer and has run around a first person shooter environment like a Fortnite or something like that recognizes how involving it is to be in a virtual world or a virtual space and to group up with other people in those spaces. I think that businesses and organizations are still in the early stages of understanding the tools and platforms that can enable interaction in that way. And I think there are, just as there are visual and auditory cues in a video call like this,
Yeah.
imagine spaces where I've got, you and I are facing each other as avatars, and other people are passing by, and I can hear in my headphones when somebody's walking by talking. Like suddenly now I have context around our like a virtualized physical environment, and so that gives a far greater sense of space that we're moving towards. So sorry, I gave you a complex answer to your simple question, but
Yeah,
I,
it is. It's not an easy answer, any of the stuff. It's always leads somewhere else. So that's okay. Um, if somebody wanted to set up a community, and we've talked about a whole pile of things just to kind of bring it all together, what what would be the 3 or 4 things you would say to them you should do up front before you even jump into the bowl or jump into the community space? What should they do?
Number one, articulate why you want to create the community. Like why for you? Like what's in it for you to build the space? Like how will you measurably quantify what it is for you? Is it, are you trying to build sales? Are you just trying to build awareness? Are you trying to solve a problem in the world? But I think like getting that written down is really important. Um, and then making good educated guesses about why someone would want to join your space and trying to validate that.
Okay.
If you can really address those two pieces, you're going to go far towards picking the right platform and figuring out how you're going to manage it day to day and all that. But like really, it's the Simon Sinek start with why question.
Yep.
Why do you want to do this? And it's not necessarily right for every organization to have an online community or space. I think for many it is, but some spaces just aren't conducive to that because there's no trust there. Like if you're part of a hobby where everyone is competing with each other in auctions, hard to build a community around that because I don't trust you. You're going to take anything that I offer as an idea and you're going to steal it and use it for yourself and use it to get advantage, over me. So those are hard, those are hard spaces to build. But I think spaces by and large where there is that potential for collaboration, that's a lot more common.
Yeah. I would say that this conversation is really a good overview, and I appreciate taking the time. If somebody wants to talk to you about building communities, Todd, how's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I am very active on LinkedIn. You can follow me out there. And I have also got a YouTube channel for Clock Tower Advisors, my primary consulting business around community building. Or you could visit me at clocktoweradvisors.com and schedule a meeting with me directly there.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Yeah, have yourself an amazing day, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you very much for listening to the STM Show. The STM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital concierge. For all your digital marketing needs, especially WordPress security, jump on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and let's help you put the pieces together and make your business succeed in the marketing realm. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Very special thank you to Todd Nilson for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I love you. I miss you very much. And thanks for all the inspiration over the years and your caring, your understanding, and helping me grow as an individual. Thank you, Dad.